Hello, everyone. I've been wanting to do this video for a very long time. Decided to do it a recording in the end and not a live stream. But I want to show you my project. I think it's really, really cool, and I think you will enjoy it. This is obviously a redacted document because I still need to keep the privacy of the deal and some of these people. But I think it does a pretty good job at explaining what I've been doing for the last couple of months and where things are headed. I think this is, well, an incredible project. And I'm extremely, extremely, extremely happy that I can do it, you know, at the age I'm doing it, with the people I'm doing it. It just, everything came to place. And I think it's the perfect moment to launch this, well, as you'll see, amazing project. For starters, and one of the most important things that I need to tell you, please keep this to yourself. But I will give you sort of a brief understanding of what I've done up until now, or the most applicable. Well, I've done a ton of jobs, but the most applicable ones I'd say um, are regarding finance. I worked for family office. I worked at an M&A boutique. I then have managed a hedge fund for a couple of years, and now I'm starting this thing, which should be the culmination of all of these experiences. So as everyone, started as an intern, ended up being an analyst, and eventually a portfolio manager for the family office. I worked myself around. I went over, went abroad, studied companies in Latin America, studied companies in Japan, and overall did pretty well. I started technically in about 2014, and eventually progressed into broader, more complete deals through an M&A boutique. The M&A boutique allowed me to not only purchase small parts of companies, but instead process entire deals, process entire due diligences of what a company actually does, how it operates, and actually going into the finer detail of the operations, the day-to-day operations of a company, and how it should be projected into the future. And through a bunch of gathering a bunch of people. We were, I think, 13 at the end, plus myself. I ended up setting up a fund, a hedge fund, Spanish hedge fund, which took about 13 months to set up. The average annualized returns for these, and this is audited, it's published, is about 16% for the people who participated. Some got less, some got more, but I think the average price is about €9. And everyone bought that, and we ended up, well, closing out, or the last people ended up leaving at 967, 68, yeah, something like that. Anyway, uh, people only left to join this new project, and this new project is an expansion of the older one, where instead of, as I told you, 13 people, we're now over 30 people. I'm looking forward to gathering even more people because I want this to eventually be listed, and we need 100 people to be listed. And I'll run through it through the entire thing with you. First of all, obviously, this is not financial advice, so do consult with a finance professional. I won't talk about specific companies, and this is not an investment vehicle because I want to actually operate and purchase 100% of companies now. And so the structure actually changes a bit. Also, the time frame for it changes because it's not a jumping in and out type thing. It's more a permanent home for businesses. But you'll see in a second. As you know, track record is important, and that is, well, the essence of why I started a hedge fund. I wanted to have an independent track record, but things have played out much better than I thought. And this track record, which has extraordinary years and then has down years as all track records, um, did bring me to the point of getting the opportunity to gather a bunch of people's interest and put it all to work in what I think is an extraordinary deal. I will talk more about the deal, but first I'm going to tell you about the actual project. So I set up a holdco, technically an opco, an operating company, which the only real difference is the fact that we're operating companies from like a central head office, uh, you know, framework. Anything that goes beyond, according to UK law, 20% of your assets. If 20% or more is being operated by you, then technically it's an opco. Even though we won't start with that 20%, we do intend to have about 30% of positions in permanently owned companies at the very beginning, at least. We'll scale that up probably to about 50%. But the spirit of it is to be the head office for these companies, where not only can we process acquisitions, do due diligences for them, um, and obviously reallocate capital, through some of, taking money from one of these businesses and putting it to work into other businesses or listed companies, but also to centralize services, things like legal, things like audit, things like marketing or HR, are services that once centralized do create a lot of efficiencies for these companies. There's two classes of shares, A shares and B shares. The only difference between those two is the fact that B shares don't have voting rights. But once we list, once we essentially do a reverse merger, where we buy a company that is already listed and absorb it into the Hermit, uh, those two share classes will merge. I don't want to have a difference, but I do want the very beginning of it to be able to be very, very flexible, because I want to create, and by I probably should be speaking in we form, because we're now three people instead of just myself. And what I do want to have flexibility in creating is these engines, and the engines are, well, the key to everything I do. Up until now, there's only been engine number two running. Engine number two is investment in microcaps, as you guys know, investing in the public markets, where we purchased 1 to 5% stakes in these companies. We've also done monetary funds. We've done a lot of debt in the past, maybe not so much with the fund, but definitely a lot of not so good debt. And obviously some ETFs here and there. Most of the ETFs are really monetary funds or short-term cash alternatives of some sort. Anyway, the whole point of this is to actually ignite engine number one, which is the engine that will allow us to purchase businesses entirely. We want to purchase 100% of businesses, or we want to purchase a large minority with the intention to purchase the rest. So, for example, one of the deals we're working on entails purchasing 20% upfront from a company that, the owner wants to sell, but he's still young, so he doesn't want to straight off the bat sell the entire thing. He does want to have a guaranteed buyer and to sort of share services with us. So we'll buy 20% of the company, and then we'll buy, 5 years down the road, we'll buy the remainder at a set price. The whole point, though, is engine number one is a facility. It gives us the ability to purchase cash flows, and we literally mean cash flows. Okay, we are not selling these companies; we're buying and operating the companies. We're reallocating resources from other engines and from within these companies to better facilitate growth. Most of the times, these are not able to grow organically, but they spit out a lot of cash. So, inorganically, further acquisitions essentially is the engine that we are going to will promote in engine number one. Each engine is also decentralized. What I'm building right now is essentially independent teams that can operate each engine separately. Engine number one will be eventually managed by two people who are extremely competent. I will talk a little bit about them in a couple slides, but they are way better than I am at the job. And I do think that not only will they do it better than I will, but more importantly, they can do it autonomously. And that is the whole point of engines. The issue in general with the space I work with, microcaps, is the fact that once you get to a certain point, you can't really deploy capital efficiently. You have to go to larger companies, and that usually means sacrificing returns. So instead of sacrificing returns, what I want is to be able to reallocate within the microcap space, within the small company space, that capital very, very efficiently and still compound at that 20 to 25%, which I've been doing for the past 8 years. In addition to engine number one and engine number two, there's going to be multiple engines in the future. Engine number three is something very concrete that I want to do, but there's other ideas I'm developing at the moment. And the whole point of each engine is, again, it's independently managed. Engine number three, even though it says venture, it's more of an accelerator. So the idea is there's this very good friend of mine who works at a major company, currently accelerating for a fee, accelerating tech companies for a fee. What he does is he takes a company with about $1 million in recurring annual revenue, and he within 12 months accelerates it to 3 million. And he gets a fee for that. He reorganizes and professionalizes parts and bits of the business, and then he moves on to the next project. Instead of doing that and doing it for a fee, my idea is to purchase 20% of a company, do it quote unquote for free, and then move on to the next project. And this is not a single man operation. He has a team of, I think, 3 additional people. So it'd be a 4-man operation. But it would allow us to still deploy capital in this same space. Again, this is not the traditional venture where you put up money and hope for the best. This is a value adding proposition where we take one company at a time. We do a very, very specific job. We invest in that company, which is already making money or at the very, very least in break even. And we, push it forward with the hope of, retaining that 20% and either possibly selling it in the future, possibly purchasing the remaining 80%, or possibly getting, I don't know, some capital returns from it through dividends, for example. The idea with these, though, is, as I told you, to have very, very decentralized teams, each one operated by a different head or different multiple heads, depending on how big it becomes. And just have conversations where I can reallocate capital within these engines. Why is this very, very, very good? Well, I think it's extraordinary because sometimes valuations in each one of these get crazy. So, for example, I'm not finding so many really compelling ideas in the public markets at the moment. I'm not finding those, super cheap 2 or 3 times cash flow companies that will perpetuate themselves, will spit out 10% dividend yields, and that will essentially guarantee again that 20 to 25% return that I'm looking for. Because that's the case, what I can do right now is I'll take some of that money, which is allocated into the public sphere, and by public I mean listed, and be allocated in this case with engine number one. At the beginning, we will only have 2 engines. Engine number 3 is reserved for once we get to about 30 million bucks. And the listing will eventually happen once we get to about 150 million. This, by the way, these figures are all in pounds, in sterling pounds, so UK currency. And the idea is to be able to multiply these and be able to reallocate within them again to maintain the same standard. I will first actually go into the team, which I think is the most interesting part. So we have 3 core documents up until now: share subscription agreement, um, the first board resolution, obviously, which has 5 points concerning appointment of directors, processing of certain share subscription conditions, and incentives. All of these are very, very detailed, but they only take about a couple pages. I'm a lawyer by training. I don't want things to have lawyer talk, nor do I want 100-page documents. I want very, very concrete, very detailed documents. So again, board resolution, share subscription agreement, and the third one, which is a 12-page document, and I think is the most important one, is the shareholders agreement, which defines how we do everything that we're going to do. All of these are approved, and the board resolution essentially opens the window between June 1st and July 31st for the initial subscription of shares. Again, this is an operating company, so it's essentially becoming a shareholder that I'm including people into. And going back to the actual team, these 2 candidates will join when we purchase a certain amount of companies. I don't want to fully disclose how this is going to work, but they are currently board members, being paid £0 per year. But they are involved with the operations and the due diligence of the first business. uh, once we get to a certain amount of businesses, they will jump over, and essentially by the time we get to about 5 or 6 businesses, they both will hopefully be operating these, not directly operating them as in like the day to day of each business, but definitely supervising the post acquisition and the further due diligence, obviously, of new private deals. Both of them have 10 years of experience or more technically, and they've worked in certain M&A departments. One of them in the Big Four, the other one I closed a couple deals with, and he's currently working for the number one advisory firm in Spain at the moment. Um, the idea with both of them is they both have a lot of corporate experience. One of them is currently in the buy side, the other one is still in the sell side, but they have different perspectives that will be very, very beneficial. For example, one of them is working in a highly scrutinized sector, which is defense, and he's able to close out these deals, but he has additional layers of privacy, additional layers of due diligence that he needs to perform in order for them to go through. By bringing this value into what I think is the most compelling engine number one, I think we can create this essentially a small conglomerate of companies that can reallocate inorganically the capital for very, very interesting growth within this, consolidated holding company, technically operating company again, because we're operating businesses. Anyway, I'll go into the interesting part, which is our first deal. We're purchasing a regional leader in the elderly care space. This is a company that hopefully will become our cash cow initially. It is technically dually financed through a lot of vendor financing and a little bit of bank debt. We intend to repay everything by year number 3. And even by repaying that, we still get a bunch of cash flows. But after year number 3, we will get a ton of cash flows. This is a business that, even though I'm assuming we'll have a 20% margin, it currently has almost a 30% margin. And I'm talking EBIT with absolutely zero debt. So it's just, spitting out cash that I can redeploy in other engines or within the same engine. This is a 75-bed uh, elderly care facility that has, been growing in terms of capacity, especially in the last 2 years. They're almost at 100% capacity usage at the moment. They get, at 100%, they'll get something like 3 million in revenue, a little bit less than that, 2.8 approximately. And again, they currently have, I think, 29% margins, but I'm assuming 20% for the sake of it. For me, the company should be valued at about 3.5, which is an 8 times multiple of free cash flow. In this case, EBIT and free cash flow are pretty much the same thing. Because again, they have no debt, they have no real capex, there's no real organic way of growing. But it's a very stable business. We will get that until the end of the end of time. It's fairly low risk because there's high regulatory barriers when it comes to getting a new elderly care facility approved, and the amount of people that the government reserves themselves to allocate. And there's a bunch of regulation that essentially creates massive barriers for people. Going from very strict policies on capacity usage all the way to how many square meters a room has to have. And negotiations with recent negotiations, should I say, with with labor unions and all that good stuff. So creating one is sort of a massive hassle. Purchasing one, though, that operates with the previous, legally bound orders, does give you a really, really big margin and a really big safety net as long as you don't change on how things operate. So in terms of how much essentially this can grow, there's only one lever in this fascinating valuation, which is that type of valuation I like to do. We have essentially a price per bed per day, the capacity usage, and the number of days. The only thing that really changes here is the money you get per bed per day. That changes with two things. The first one is obviously pensions and inflation. So there's like inflation adjustments to this, and a lot of, if not all are paid by the government. Even the private individuals, they all sacrifice a portion of their pension, so you get all the money through government payment, and that is very very linked to again pensions and inflation. The other thing we can technically edit is a little bit capacity, but just having a baseline of about 80% would be fantastic because it creates that you know that margin through covering all of the fixed costs and just printing money beyond that. It's not like I want to maximize capacity usage because there are also some costs, as in like portion of staffing per patient um, that you need to keep up with. But I'd say 80% is fairly reasonable for what we're doing. As for the deal, well, the deal is currently priced at a very compelling valuation. I can't tell you how much, but it is low single digits multiple of free cash flow. We should see a massive return once this closes because, again, I'll value everything at constant. In this case, the constant will be 8 times for the last 12 months of free cash flow. That will be a constant. It'll be updated every month. So you'll see a progression in the valuation, but just when we acquire it, because there's a difference between the multiple that we're paying and the multiple that we are holding it at, you'll see that on paper gain, and it is kind of crazy. It's closer to triple digit return than it is to a single digit return. Anyway, the deal has three things that we want to sort of push for. The first one is obviously vendor financing, because we're financing part of this through the CEO with essentially like an earn-out structure where we're paying him a bunch of money in year one and in year two after we close. We're delaying those payments, and the deal is more or less self-financed, with those payments in mind. There's also the deployment of cash flow up until now. Well, because organic growth is sort of stumped, this guy has only been able to give out dividends to himself. We want to solve for that and make it way, way more efficient to reinvest and essentially compound on that cash that he generates. And then there's the asset backing of everything. So a lot of the stuff, because this was created in the 90s, it's valued at cost in accounting terms, but the real replacement cost of it is substantially larger. So we're getting also a deal on the assets themselves. And yeah, feel free to ask any questions about these. I think it's a fantastic first deal for us, and we'll be able to align with the CEO who will remain with us for 2 years, where he's training his substitute. There's a person already working there who's a lot younger who will take over um, after year two. And we signed with him 3 more years, so it's a 5-year contract where he will help us with the due diligence of further acquisitions, which I think is extremely interesting. We get, he still is employed, and he gets to deploy his skills at a much higher level, in my opinion. And on our side, we get essentially an expert. We're paying a guy who's been working 30 to 40 years in the sector to help us do the due diligence of all their elderly care facilities within the region. So accelerated due diligence essentially of further deals. Anyway, and that is everything for now. I hope to have made this very, very clear. Some of you, I've been fortunate enough to interview you. Again, we're going from about 13 people in the fund to now over 30 people. I think it's over 35 actually, that are subcommitted to this project. But the idea is to raise, if we can raise about £10 million, that would be fantastic. The idea overall, though, is to get that proportion going where the private and the public end are balanced, and we're not necessarily specializing in one, but definitely creating decentralized teams that can operate each one independently, and where we can allocate within the engines as things pop up, as interesting deals come up. I don't know about you, but I don't really know any deal in the public market right now that I find as compelling as this one, for example, in the private end. Just, companies being purchased at 2, 3, 4 times free cash flow are just not out there. Anyway, feel free to pop over an email if you have any questions. Also, comment on the post if you want to. This overall will, I think it'll be posted either on Saturday or on Wednesday. So I'll see you in a couple days, and feel free to message me at any point. I am more than happy to talk to you. If you want to check out the track record, I think the easiest way to do it is there's 2 years of published information, essentially week by week. At the very, very least, month by month, but week by week, because I posted weekly since June of 2024, where you can see how we think, see the companies that we've been involved with, which do follow a pattern. You'll see a lot of oil and gas, a lot of elderly care, or like hotels, psychiatric wards, stuff like that. And there's a bunch of stuff that's connected to cybersecurity, cyber defense, uh, a lot of very connected, very pattern seeking uh, operations that at least rhyme with each other and that we understand, I think, perfectly. I wouldn't say I'm an expert at everything, but I would say that some of these sectors I've covered for a very long time. And we can find very interesting deals, very compelling deals with these. Plus, adding people to the team just broadens this spectrum where you'll not only count with my expertise, but with the expertise of these people. And yeah, other than that, the only thing I will announce is that in a couple weeks I'll have some interns over, and I will be going live with those guys. We'll be doing the three evaluations: president, comparable, and DCFs. We'll do those live, and we will also go and review a couple cases that have happened in the past and will happen in the near future. Hopefully, those will be recorded, even though these guys have some signed an NDA, and they'll get access to certain information that they can't publish, or at least they can't publish until we close some of these deals. Anyway, I'll see you around. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, and yeah, send in a message over if you want to have a further conversation about this, or to be honest, anything. Some of you are absolutely fantastic, and I think most of you actually keep this between us. Uh, it's just so much fun to talk with experts, talk with people that are, well, essentially people like myself, but either younger or older. They're usually in like a different stage of life, but I find it fascinating, and I'm pretty sure I can learn from you, and hopefully you can learn a little bit from me. So have a good one, and I'm always bribable with beers. Ciao, ciao.